And hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. I'm your host, Coach Elex, and with me, my amazing co host,
Stephen Frederick.
Stephen the Medium, who is also my amazing husband of 33 years, going into 34. Stephen, how about
Oh
that?
my.
Oh my, is right. And today we have an awesome show when love has condition, breaking generational patterns and choosing love over expectations. And how this came about is, well, first of all, Stephen came up with you found a video on Instagram,
I
and
did.
and it was a video that particularly focused on having a gay son or daughter, and how that challenge you know that pattern can challenge how certain generations believes in belief systems that they hold for years and years, and it raises the powerful idea for today's conversation: what happens when someone that you love becomes different from who you expect them to be? And the question is, do you change them, or do you allow their truth to change you? And for Stephen and I, we both, of course, we related to this at a personal level as two gay males. But I want you to relate to you at whatever level you listen from. So we're gonna have an awesome conversation about these subjects, Stephen. And once again, thank you for bringing up a subject that I think it's so relatable to all of us.
Yeah, the video actually was really talking about what you said, but with the perspective of how gay, men or women, boys or girls come into this world is part of why we're here, is to really show people and focus on the love that is conditional, in that what we're here for is to hopefully break that chain, as you mentioned. So that's why I posted it. It was a pretty amazing video. Watching it was powerful, but especially when it relates to your personal life, like myself, and I'm sure like you, Elix. So
Hmm.
that's why I loved it.
Yeah. So we gonna have an awesome conversation about that. But Stephen, before we jump into the subject, we always use this segment to catch up, to bring our listeners into our lives. So, and there's plenty of that. So, tell people what you're up to. What are you, Stephen the Medium, up to lately? I'm
Where do I
afraid, exactly. I asked a
where do I start?
question,
Where do I
and
start?
I'm like holding my breath, thinking, "Oh my God, where is he gonna go with this one?" All right, go for it.
Well, one exciting thing is that I think I mentioned last Friday is that I'm going to do a workshop September 26th. And it's really just about what a subject that we talked about our blueprints and contracts before we come here. I really cannot wait to do this. It's a Saturday, 1 to 4, and it really just focuses on, if people don't know, before we get here, before we're born, we sign up for why we're coming. But of course, when we're born, we don't know, and we forget the blueprint and the contract. And so we have to rely on a couple of things. Hopefully, our souls, because that's really where the details of the blueprint lie. But unfortunately, you're battling everything that's external, right? People that are around you, and just life that can certainly detour you from why you came here, which is always not a great thing. So I put that together, and that's out, and I'm really excited about that. And clearly there's some other stuff that October's a busy month for me, because I was just talking about, they just posted on the Mashpee Women's Organization or Club. They are having me towards the end of October, which I'm really excited about. The director just emailed me. I wasn't even aware of a Mashpee Women's Club or organization, and asked me would I be interested in presenting. And she said I guess the capacity is like 100 people. That's going to be really exciting. There's a lunch first, and this is not just for the members. This is for public too. So if you're ever interested, I think it's a Tuesday. If you're interested in going to that for a lunch, and then hear me present about my life, and of course do some readings, you should be there. But all the information's on my website. So other than that, Elix, it's just, it's life is moving forward.
Life is moving forward,
Yeah.
and we have some exciting things happening next weekend. By the way, we are not going to have a show because we are headed to Provincetown for the weekend.
That's boo. That's supposed to be my show, right?
So, but you're not booing Provincetown because you've been looking forward to
No,
this
I'm
trip.
booing that I'm not going to be doing my show.
I know.
I'm booing. No, of course I'm very excited about going to P Town and spending several nights there with our besties. So it's good.
Jonathan
it's really
and
good.
Christmas.
Yes,
Can't
yeah.
wait. Cannot wait to see them. And today we're excited because we're having a dinner party for our friends, and so it's exciting to do that because we haven't done that. I don't know since when. It's been several weeks, I think.
At having dinner here, yeah, at least
Yeah.
it has been. So this is good. And last night we took a little drive to Rhode Island to pick up a cake at Greg's, because anybody that knows Greg's or have tasted Greg's cakes know they're the best in the world. So that's dessert.
And if you really want to impress your guests, that's what you do. You pull out a Greg's cake for dessert.
Sure.
They take a bite of that and they go like, "What? This is the best cake I've ever had in my life." And that is, I'm not joking. That is reality.
It
Their
is.
chocolate layer cake, it's probably the best chocolate layer cake I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, just remove the probably. There's
So
no
it
probably.
is the best. But
Yes.
last night it was funny because one of my favorite. I love the chocolate layer, but my favorite is the coconut raspberry. But last night when we went there, I wanted to try the coconut custard, and so the waitress is like, "Well, just give it a try. If you don't like it, I'll still give you a piece of the coconut raspberry." I'm like, "Really?" But you know what happened, Steven? I ate the whole freaking coconut custard because it was delicious. But to my surprise, she still gave me a piece of the coconut raspberry to go.
Jessica,
Jessica, yeah, no charge.
she was the coolest, best server
She
there
was.
was. She was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And the desserts, no matter what you get, because they have other things. They have pies also in addition to cakes, and they have puddings. No matter what you get there, the desserts are just number one. They're just A+ desserts, and I'm really excited that we have a huge full cake for tonight for dinner. So
I'm very excited about that. So, what else is going on, Stephen? What else would you want to bring listeners into part of our lives?
well, it's just so many things in just too little time. Or should I say too little things with so much time, if I was Willy Wonka. Just saying. You know how he would say that backwards if you watch the movie?
By the way, when he says that, my eyes, if you were able to see me right now, my eyes are like rolled all the way to the back of my head because
Yeah.
Stephen never has a lack of subjects of conversation, in particular when it's about what's going on with him.
Come
So,
on. I mean,
talk to me. Talk
there's-
to us.
There's always things going on. There's even things going on like when I'm doing, I've been certainly promoting my workshop that I just said, but a lot of times I just want to do videos or like little clips, just like highlights of stuff I've learned from Spirit. And I'll tell you, sometimes I don't do them right away or don't get to them because I can't figure out, there's so much in my head of what I want to put or say or a subject matter that it's sort of gets overwhelming for me. Like, wait a minute, I'll do this. No, wait a minute, I'll do that. I'll do this. It's just a little bit crazy. But putting Spirit aside, because we did this after our show last Friday, we did the Cape Cod Dinner Train, which was pretty spectacular.
No,
It was
no, that was
pretty spectacular with the crew.
Yes.
Shout out to John and Christmas and Julia. We had the best time, and the best again,
And
another
our
best server,
waitress, what
Tiffany.
was Tiffany?
Tiffany.
That
Yeah,
she was fabulous.
she was pretty amazing. But that train is just amazing. That you're sitting, you're sitting on this beautiful train, and you've got this beautiful setup and this 3 or 5 course, whatever it was, meal, and as you're eating, you're just watching Cape Cod, and you go over the railroad bridge and go down the canal, and it's kind of funny. It's just it's beautiful because we live here, so we see it all the time, but it's a different perspective. But that was pretty amazing.
No, no, but that's the point, though, Stephen. We live here, and even for us, it's just such a unique, one of a kind experience. You go over the railroad bridge, but you also go through these beautiful neighborhoods, Monument Beach, where we live. You go through Sandwich, and this time it didn't go all the way to Hyannis, but along the canal. It's just beautiful, and we chose one of the trains that has, like, what is it called, the dome or something like that.
Yes.
And so the view is like it's a splendid view. It's like, there's nothing but glass. So it's just absolutely gorgeous.
It is amazing. The time flew by because we were having just the greatest time, and when you're sitting there with people that you love and just laughing and having a great time, that's why the time goes by so fast. And I got to tell you, I got eggplant, and as a pescatarian, that eggplant was so great. And when they served a chowder for like one of the appetizers, and I asked, was there any meat in it, and right away one of the guys that was walking by said there is. So I told them I don't eat meat, and they just quickly switched it to a salad for me. They were really nice. They were very, very nice.
Yeah. So if you've never done that train, or if you're planning to come visit Cape Cod, that is absolutely a 5-star idea. I would highly, highly, highly recommend it.
Yes, I would too. And you know what? You just led me right into this, because if anyone is interested in a show and maybe you haven't seen it yet, 5 Star Weekend, you have to check it out. I'm obsessed.
He is
Obsessed with Jennifer
obsessed, and he's
Gardner and
trying
the
to get
cast.
me to
And
be
it just
obsessed
came
with you.
out. They dropped 8 shows for the season, for the first season. It's already been renewed for the second season. It was the biggest rated scripted show that came out on is it Peacock or Paramount? I can't remember.
I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Just Five
I
Star
think it's
Weekend.
Peacock. I think it's Peacock.
Amazing, amazing.
And it isn't. I normally would say, yeah, Stephen. That one of your many shows that you watch, but it's an upgrade because he's been obsessed with my 10 wives, 1,000 pound sisters or whatever the. I mean, some of the
You
shows.
know what, Elix? Listen, 1,000 pound sisters. Can you get it right? And it's not
Please.
10 wives.
Well,
And it's
just
dwindling
whatever.
down. He's got one wife now.
Well,
Just saying. Just saying.
so and then we try watching the Housewives of Rhode Island. I'm like, no, this is not happening in our household. So that
No, but
show
I
is
agreed.
absolutely
I
an
don't
upgrade.
I don't do Housewives. I agree. That was yeah. All right.
No. But listen, we got to take a break because soon our producer, Jim, we got the GM producing today, is going to yell at us. So let's take a break. And when we come back, we are going to have this amazing conversation, when love has conditions. So we will take a break. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix. And with me, my amazing co host,
Attorney Masick.
my husband, and also known as Stephen the Medium. And today's conversation is When Love Has Conditions. And as we share with you in our previous segment, we came across this really wonderful video on Instagram that really made us think. And it suggested that sometimes a person enters a family, and by simply being who they are authentically, it begins challenging beliefs and patterns that may have existed for generations. And watching that, although it focused on being gay, it made me wonder what happens when someone that you love doesn't fit the story that you created for them. Again, the film focused on a child comes out as gay. But what about somebody that you love chooses a different religion? What about a son or daughter that rejects the career the family has envisioned? Or someone decides to marry or to not marry? And we know family members who have chosen that. Someone establishes boundaries that previous generations never had by simply saying, this is who I am. And I so can relate to this conversation. And when you do that, suddenly we're confronted by something much bigger than the individual decision. We're confronted with ourselves, our beliefs, our expectations, our conditioning, and perhaps even the limits of our love. Because honestly, how often have you found yourself saying to someone else, I love you unconditionally, when nothing about that person challenges your conditions? The real test comes when loving someone requires you to reconsider something that you have believed your entire life, Stephen. So, Stephen, when you watch the video, and again, it was powerful for both of us because he honed in on, what happens, why, showing us as a being authentically gay. But why did that video bring so many emotions for both of us and for you in particular, Stephen?
I think it's because of first and foremost, it's talking about who both of us are, right? As being in the LGBTQ plus community. So right there, when I saw, I think one of the lines says, when a gay boy or girl come in to life and they start questioning these beliefs, as I think you mentioned, that's where you start digging up whether or not love is conditional or it's unconditional, right? And so of course it did, because I thought, God, when you and I met, and that was 33 years ago, when I introduced you to my mom, I mean, of course I know she loved me, but in that moment, what that brought up, it did become love that had a condition, right? Okay, yes, I love you, but I don't love this part of you. I don't love that you're gay. At the beginning of when I told her, clearly that switched and changed, and she loved and loves you, even though she's passed away. That's completely changed. But it was representing, when I watched that video, was representing, oh my God, exactly what this video is saying is exactly what I did, talking to my mom. And I'll never forget. So we met in 93, Christmas time, the holidays, 93, we spent separately. And clearly you were here. Obviously I was still living at home. And in 94, the following year for Christmas, we had gone more than a year, obviously, almost like a year and a half of dating, both of us were dating each other, and it was exclusive. And in the holiday of 94, I remember asking my mom, because my mom would always do Christmas at her house with my aunts and family, and I asked her about you coming, and she said no. And I'll never forget, my brother asked my mother for a friend if he could come, because I guess he didn't have anything to do, and she said yes. And that's when I was done. I really was done. And Christmas Eve, if you remember, Elix, which I'm sure you do, of '94, I left Massachusetts. I was with Elix, in his apartment and the whole school thing, and went down to my house and dropped a bag of presents. And I remember my mother said, what are you doing? Why are you bringing this now? And I said, "'Cause I'm not going to be here tomorrow." And she said, "What do you mean?" And I just told her, I know this is who I want to be with. This is it. And if you can't accept that, if you can't, you can let, Billy bring blah, 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 a friend, but you can't let me bring someone who I know is going to be in my life forever, then this is going to be a problem. And, thankfully I did do that, because there's a lot of people in our community that for many, many reasons are just afraid, or just don't get to that place. They don't push it, and they keep things separate and all of that kind of stuff. But thank God I did, and ultimately it forced my mother to really look at the love she had for me or has for me, and she was just, it was love, but it was also, at that point, it was conditional, and she broke that. So all of that, those experiences, Helix.
And honestly, Stephen, one of my questions was, from your own journey, or what has your journey taught you about the difference between being loved and being fully accepted? And that example that you gave about your mom really fully exemplifies the difference between the two. And of course, I could say I've experienced I have a very similar experience than yours as well. But I think one of the things you said now, Stephen, that it's worth highlighting for both of us. I personally do a lot of work with the LGBTQ plus community. And just because you and I are fully, we fully own who we are, we don't edit who we are, we honor who we are regardless of whether you like it or you don't, because I've learned to stop compromising me to make somebody else comfortable, right? And you have done the same. But the reality is many people don't know how to do that, Stephen. Mm-hmm. They want to, but they don't know how to do that. And they end up compromising, and so if you're listening and you're sitting in that space, then the question becomes, are you willing to compromise your love for life, your fulfillment, your satisfaction, your happiness, being present here? Are you? And if you are, then okay. I mean, I'm not here to judge that, because the only one that knows and the only one that can answer that question would be you. But for me personally, Steve, and I tell you, I've learned, over the years, I find myself, especially the past several years, it's like we're both in this growing journey, right? We're learning so much about us, about our relationship, about, what matters, about what we're not willing to compromise. And I tell you, Stephen, I carry that belief beyond, my family. I carry that belief to friends, to colleagues. I am not interested in conditional relationships. How often as gay men we have heard, continue to hear, I'm okay with you being gay, but can you not talk about your love life? Or how many people feel uncomfortable calling you my husband? And you and I have learned to no, I'm not compromising. You're not my partner. You're my husband. And if you're uncomfortable with that, then deal with it. But I'm not willing to compromise to make you comfortable. And again, the same applies to relationships. I'm not willing to compromise, you telling me, yeah, you support our community, but the moment there's a but, nothing you say really matters to me. What would you say, Stephen, before we take our next commercial break?
Well, again, we've lived it, right? I think that the biggest thing with our community is the first thing that we find out is that we don't fit. We don't fit. In society, in so much of society, it's you have to fit, right? It's like if you've got this big tray of like I don't know, squares and circles and triangles shapes, and then you actually get the actual like fixed or like ball or square or triangle, and you get it and you just plop it in and it fits, right? And then all of a sudden we come and we're rectangle, and there's no rectangle in this little table, so you're just looking at it like, what do I do? Well, you're gonna have to turn into a square or a triangle or a circle because you don't fit. And I'm not changing, so you got to change. So
Yes.
that's what we deal with. And I remember after we got married, we went to the I think we were doing something at the hospital for something. I don't remember. I think it was a sinus infection or so. And I remember writing out after we were married on the this was several years ago, on the intake form, my husband. And the woman is inputting the info, the stuff that I put in, and I remember she just got to the point of relationship. Now I clearly put husband, and she said, so he's your partner. I'm like, yeah. So if you could speed it up, because we're in a competition for a country line dancing, team, and he's my partner. So let's move it. And she just looked at me, and I'm like, he's my husband. I was like, but that's something. Those are, me. That's a pet peeve. You try to
Yes.
get away with saying a partner, it's not going to go well. It's just not.
Yeah. And I'm okay with that. I've
So,
learned, I've applaud that, and that's one of the many beautiful things I've learned from being with you in our relationship. But another thing I've learned is that we need to take another commercial break, Stephen. We are half past the hour. So let's do that. Let's take a commercial break. But if you find this conversation insightful, stay with us. You can call us 508 222 1320. Join the conversation. But stay tuned. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone. Welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Helix. Happy Friday to all of you. I'm your host, Coach Helix, and with me, my amazing co host,
Stephen the Medium.
Stephen the Medium, Stephen Masek, my husband, and um, one of the most amazing people in my life.
Why, thank you.
And Stephen, today's conversation is about is um, when love is conditional. I don't know, when love has conditions. I was sort of distracted by something else here, but anyways, let's see what, and maybe this is perhaps piggyback to what you started saying, when authenticity really disrupts the system, because that's when things begin to get uncomfortable. Sometimes the person labeled the difficult one is actually the person brave enough to stop pretending, whether it's that child who says that that's not who I am, the family member who establishes a boundary, the person that comes out, the person who leaves an unhealthy marriage, the person who finally talks about something everyone else agree not to talk about. And we often call that person disruptive. I know I was called disruptive. I was called difficult. But perhaps really the disruption isn't always destruction. Maybe the disruption is how a family grows. And I think that your story sort of highlighted that. The person challenging the system may simply be holding up a mirror and asking everyone else to look. And I don't think, Stephen, if you hadn't disrupted the system the way you did, we would not have had the beautiful relationship that we ended up having with your mom. And the same thing can be said, as it relates to the relationship that you have with my mom as well. What are you, and by the way, not only my mom, but the relationship that you now have with my family, my aunts, and the people that we see frequently in Puerto Rico. What are your thoughts around that, Stephen?
I mean, I completely agree, because I remember what I was talking about with my mother. I remember, I don't know, whatever subsequent to that, Christmas Eve thing, when I said I'm not coming Christmas Day. It wasn't that long after that. I remember having a conversation with my mother and said to her, look, I know, as I mentioned already, I know this is who I want to be with. So you've got a choice. Either you accept him as who I'm seeing, or we are going to see our time together just dwindle down, because I can't be in two different places at the same time. So that's up to you. And that's where I was. I was done. I was just so done. But that doesn't mean I wasn't so scared also. Like, this is my mom, right? This is the only parent I had. My dad, I lost my dad at 8 years old. So this is the only parent I had to even think about not having any more relationship with her was devastating. I was petrified. I was afraid. So, I just want to make sure I say that, because it wasn't, even back then, it wasn't a place, I wasn't in a place of, it's no problem. Either you do what I say or you don't. I was, as that video said, I was not fitting in, and I was putting a mirror in front of my mom saying, you please look at your perspective, look at your beliefs, look what those things could potentially destroy or eliminate our relationship. And the funny thing is, Elix, is that, like, her or anybody else, where did that come from, right? It didn't come from her soul. It didn't come from her blueprint or a contract coming down here. The soul is the higher conscious, right? It's this place that wants the best for us, and one of the best things for us is to treat people with respect and love people in that connection, right? Where did that come from? Well, that's the whole point of being born and just being thrown into people's beliefs, and there you go. So, and it's the other side of the conditional love. You know, we talk about us coming through as gay men and sort of breaking the system, but then it's the other side of that perspective of will they change? Will they challenge their beliefs because they love somebody? You know,
And unfortunately, the reality is for many people, they won't. They
right?
won't. They choose to hold on to what is familiar. They choose to hold on to what has been tradition. And, sadly, Stephen, that leads to young people taking their lives
Mm-hmm.
because they don't find themselves accepted by the people who at some point said, "Yeah, I love you unconditionally." But what that really meant is, "I love you, but," right? Don't do this. "I love you, but do it, stay this way or do the things that we've always done." And from my perspective, Stephen, I don't know. I can I can tell you that I was consciously doing this because I just knew this was the only way. No, I remember you know, being a young person. I mean, I was in my teens where I was like, I don't know, I just didn't believe that I wanted to compromise. And believe me, I grew up in Puerto Rico, freaking traditional cultural values where masculinity is looked in a certain way, and if you don't follow that, you're going against the grind. And I've been very spoken about. I also grew up with a father that, if I wasn't that, it cost me significantly because, of both the verbal and the physical abuse that I endured. But the reality is, none of that really mattered because I made a decision. This is who I am, and you either accept it or you don't, but I'm not compromising. And that's what allowed me to bring you to Puerto Rico, and
Yes.
not be afraid that, oh my God, are they going to accept you? Are they going to accept me? And I didn't care. And the reality is, when I think what ended up happening is I felt into that place of being so comfortable honoring who I was, Stephen, that it's almost like that alone created an opening for my family to say, "Oh, well, if he's that comfortable, why are we uncomfortable?" And then slowly people began shifting. I mean, look at my grandmother, how she treated you. Look at my father, how he welcomed you into our home. You know what I'm saying, Steven?
Of course. I mean, those are the examples of, as I mentioned, people really challenging their beliefs again or themselves, and to see is are my beliefs worth losing whatever relationship, or again putting those conditions on loving somebody. And like you said, also it doesn't happen all the time, and which is just so sad. And that's why we're doing the show, because you mentioned also earlier, this doesn't have to be just about the like our community. It can be anything, anybody dealing with something that, especially when one of the, I think the crazy things is if when somebody maybe has had a relationship, say a family and friends and whatnot, and they've been a certain way, and then they finally decide, I'm not living my life. I'm living my life for everybody else, and I'm being a certain way for everybody else. And then they decide, I'm done. I want to be in sync with my soul. I want to live authentically and genuinely. And how that also just causes a like a rift or a tidal wave around some people around them
Yeah.
that don't want that person to change because they love them the way they used to be, and now not necessarily love them the way they are now. That's a whole nother sort of mid-cycle situation that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have family members, Stephen, who are young, who got married and they made decisions not to have children. In a traditional culture, that would be challenged. People would be like, "Oh my God, why? Why would they get married? Why would they choose that?" And the reality is because they chose that. And that is our responsibilities to honor that and to be happy for that and to accept that. And I'm really proud, Stephen, because for you and I, it's like, oh, okay, well, good for you. It's your decision, and we value that. But that comes from having been in that place where we know what it looks like to be judged. We know what it looks like to have to conform because that's what is expected. So we're not doing it. We're not only not doing it for us, but we now see life and other people through that lens.
Yeah, we know what it's like to not fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And like you just mentioned, young people getting married and saying they don't want children, that doesn't fit in. It just doesn't.
Yes.
Everyone is going to start questioning, what? Yeah, are they pregnant yet? How many kids? Yeah, it's just, as I said earlier, it's crazy.
Same thing for, young people who do not want to get married. That's the expectation. Oh my God, when are you gonna get married? When are you gonna? Well, they don't want to get married, and that's that. And we need to learn to be okay with that. That's not for you to decide. That's for the individual to decide.
Well, of course,
So,
all those rules, or most of those rules, and we just talked about this morning. They're man-made. Like,
hmm
who says you have to do this or you have to do that? Right? I mean, it should be equally accepted whether you do or you don't. If you do, wonderful, great, and if you don't, wonderful, great. So,
I love that. But what I need to love is that we are at the last segment. So let's take a break, Stephen. And when we come back, we'll continue with this conversation. If you're listening and you appreciate the conversation, stay with us. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone. Welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. I'm your host, Coach Elex, and with me, my amazing co host,
Stephen the Medium.
and Stephen, who is also my amazing husband. And today, Stephen, we're talking about when love has conditions. And we use the phrase unconditional love very easily, but unconditional love becomes much, much complicated when someone makes a choice that we don't understand, as we have been sharing throughout the show, or where they believe something that we don't believe, or they become someone we didn't expect. Maybe those moments reveal something really important. They show us where our love still has conditions, and that's perhaps, for if you're listening, for you to ask yourself, if you live the way I think you should live, I accept you. Is that you? If you believe what I believe, I accept you. If you become who I imagine you would become, I accept you. But the question for you, if you relate to those comments, is that really love, or is it approval? And those aren't necessarily the same thing. Love and approval are two different things. Perhaps unconditional love doesn't require you or us to understand everything about another person's journey. It just simply requires you to recognize their humanity and allow them to have their own journey. Stephen, from a spiritual perspective, what happens when we stop trying to control somebody else's journey?
Wait a minute. You sort of threw me with this question. You're asking me what happens when we
stop trying to control. You could answer both ways. What happens when you control somebody else's journey, but also what may happen when you stop trying to control somebody else's journey from a spiritual perspective.
But are you saying in reference to, like, you're talking about conditional or unconditional love? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Because what I would argue is when you're trying to control somebody else's journey, that's conditional love.
Right. Okay.
When you stop, yeah, go ahead.
No, now I get it. Well, I probably have said this before when I do readings. One of the things that I've heard, felt, seen over and over again is that there's no such thing. I always say to people when I do readings, a lot of times, there's no such thing as time in spirit. They don't have time like we do. They don't care about time. They don't have time. And I bring that up because, you can bring something up that happened yesterday or this morning, and then the next thing, something that happened 20 years ago. There's no time. But I also say there's also no labels at all. There's no such thing as labels. It's just, it's pure love. So there in spirit, they've already experienced this place, the physical earth, that does have the option of conditional or unconditional love. Now in spirit, they get to see how they behaved, whichever journey they followed, whether, like you mentioned, they're trying to control someone or not control someone based on that. And now in spirit, they get to see a whole different perspective. And it's there's always a little thread of something when they give messages to people that I'm doing readings about thrying to alert them or give them some kind of redirection of there's no such thing as labeling in spirit. When you get to spirit, when we die and we get there, it's like people are embarrassed that either they tried as best as they could with conditional love, try to control this, some person, or the opposite or so. It's a whole different perspective. And I think it's an easy answer, Elix, from Spirit's perspective is don't do that. This is supposed to be just like a dog. You're supposed to have unconditional love for everybody in the connection. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not people that you may have to, pull away from or not have relationships with. That's something completely different and separate, but in reference to just loving somebody, you just, in that connection, Spirit just reiterates all the time. You're here to love unconditionally.
Yeah. You know, that brings me, I've been in plenty of your readings, Stephen, and often people, this subject comes up because people say things like, oh my God, are they happy with me because I married so and so and they didn't like that person? Or are they upset that I got that tattoo because they hated tattoos? Or whatever. You know what I'm saying, Stephen, right? So,
Hmm.
so this is something that comes up in your readings constantly from spirit. You know, if people are listening and they relate to this and they have that concern in the background, what would you tell them, Stephen?
Well, they don't care. And I just did like a video on Instagram and Facebook, I don't know, last week
That's
about
right.
this same subject of it was just about the example you used is an example I used about, my daughter got a tattoo, and I am sure, my father's here in spirit and he's talking through. He's got to be really, really mad. He hated tattoos. And I kept, every time I gave a little example, my next statement was, they don't care. They don't care, and they don't care. And that's how I ended the video with, oh, and by the way, they don't care. Because that's, again, it's sort of in line with what we're talking about, is that perspective is what we've learned. It's man-made of, like, even someone doesn't like tattoos, like, okay, maybe you don't, but that's conditional love. Don't get a tattoo. Like I'll kill
Yes.
you if you get a tattoo, right? I mean,
Yes.
seriously, that is man-made. It's belief. It's just a belief that you picked up somehow, some way. If you go down to the root of it, somehow, some way, someone said something, someone connected. That tattoo looks trashy. That's all you needed to hear, and you've accepted that, and that's your belief. And the opposite is that tattoo looks so cool, and then you're on the other side, right? So in
Yeah.
in in spirit, that's why I did the video, is they don't care. When they're in spirit, it's just pure love. They don't care. All they want is you to be happy, and they want you to be at peace, and they want to try to give you whatever advice they can to live your most extraordinary life.
Now, in alignment with that, Stephen, what if someone who has passed and they could speak to a family who is divided by judgment? So the person that comes to you, that's their family. They're divided by judgment. What do you think that person in spirit would want that family to understand?
Well, they're very. I always say I 100%, and you heard me say this, I
Yes.
100% trust spirit, right? Whatever they're going to tell me, even from my perspective, because I am still on this earth, sometimes I'll stop for a second in my head and think, I don't know how this is going to land. But I always come back and say, I trust spirit, and then I'll deliver whatever the message is. Each person in each scenario is completely different. I do remember one of my first readings, I was reading this woman, this young girl, she was probably like in her 20s, and I remember saying, your grandmother stepping forward, and she smiled and she got all excited, and I wasn't getting names back then. I was at the beginning of my practice, and I'm like, it's an M name, and she looked at me and said, that's my father's mother, and please tell her to leave. I want nothing to do with her because of the conditional love. I found this out later when she emailed me and whatnot. And the grandmother just said to me, yeah, I need to say something and I'm not moving. And I'm like, how do I handle this? And so I said, listen, I don't control who comes through. They heard you. I'm sure she's going to back up, but I just have to say something that she wants me to say. And I told her, and she got very teary eyed. And I don't know, maybe a month later, she emailed me. She said she talked to her mother, and it was it was a cathartic moment for both of them, because the father's family, when the father died, the mother was in charge of completely disowning, her daughter-in-law and her granddaughter. That's of course why the girl I was reading was so upset.
Yeah.
And but she did give me this beautiful email saying, I didn't realize it at the time, but this is exactly what me and my mom needed to move forward, to start the journey of letting this go. It was beautiful. So each person's different, but spirit knows. They come from a non-judgment territory, a place of pure love, and all they want is to help us feel that pure love, that unconditional pure love.
I love that, Stephen. And with that said, Stephen, we are at the top of the hour. So I want to leave you, our listeners, with this thought. Think about that maybe, just maybe, the person who challenges everything a family believes isn't there to destroy your family. Maybe they're creating an opportunity for your family to evolve, for your family and you to question, to heal, to become more compassionate, to love more expansively. And that doesn't mean abandoning values. It just simply means becoming curious enough to ask where those values come from and courageous enough to examine whether they still reflect who you choose to be. Remember this, every generation inherits something, and every generation gets to decide what it passes on. So I hope that this show made a difference for you, as it has always. It always makes a difference for me and Stephen, because it allows us to challenge our own thought process and to reflect on our own lives. So thank you for that opportunity. With that said, Stephen, tell people where they can get a hold of you, and how they can find you, and anything else you need to share before we complete.
Nope, Stephen the Medium. That's my website. That's my social media logo. So that's how you find me. And you can go to my website to see exactly what's going on in my life.
Yes, and with that said, you can, if you don't follow me on Instagram and Facebook, you should. It's at Coach Helix. Anyway, just type Coach Helix and I will show up just like Stephen does when you type Stephen the Medium. That's it, Stephen. We are at the top of the hour. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Jim, for taking over producing our show, because Dave needed another day off, allegedly. Stephen, anything else before we close?
Yes, I thank you. I ditto everything you said, but my last thing is Feliz cumpleaños, happy birthday to our loves, Eva and Mariana.
That's right. Happy birthday, feliz cumpleaños, Eva Mariana. See you guys soon, okay?
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.